Much has been said in recent days about the so-called deal between the media and the monarchy, but what's the truth of this arrangement? You could argue that the royals would rather nothing negative ever made it into the papers about them. The deal goes wrong when royals think that they can turn off the tap of publicity when it starts to get critical and negative. What is the deal between the palace and the press? It's not an official deal. It's not like there's a contract that's been written out and agreed by both sides, but the deal is that there'll be a royal press pack covering the royals about their official business, and the royals will provide us with photographs and opportunities to occasionally interview them in return for publicity. And when it comes to their private lives, because they've supplied us with some information about themselves and photographic opportunities in their official lives, that we leave them well alone. There's a deal in place because the palace needs publicity for the causes that their royals are championing, and actually for the brand itself, for the brand of monarchy, and this idea that it is actually doing something useful for the wider public, not least as it's part subsidised by the taxpayer. And then because of that degree of public funding, there's also a need for it to be scrutinised. I think that the both of the boys has always seen the press as a necessary evil. However, when we talk about playing games, we know that Harry was less comfortable with the arrangements than William was. And we saw this particularly when Meghan came on the scene, and he actually got Jason Knauf, his then communications secretary, to release this quite unprecedented statement where he did refer to it as a game that he and Meghan weren't willing to participate in. So there's always been this degree to which Harry has rebelled against this idea of playing ball with the media. You know, you scratch their backs, they'll scratch yours. Prince William has had angry encounters with the media in the past, complaining vociferously, for instance, when a younger Kate Middleton was besieged by paparazzis as she walked to her London home. So he's no fan of underhand tactics. Having said that, unlike Prince Harry, who tends to consume a lot of his news on his phone, and even once admitted to reading the comments beneath stories, William will read the newspapers in their kind of paper format and takes quite an interest in current and global affairs. So you could say that perhaps he's got a different perspective of the media than Harry does. In the past, we've seen William absolutely lose his temper over intrusion. A classic example is when Kate was photographed topless in the south of France on holiday. So we have had those sorts of tussles in the past, but they have abated in recent years, probably because the paparazzi interest has abated. So that in turn has kind of solved the problem, I think, for the Cambridges. But for Harry and Meghan, their complaint isn't just about intrusion, it's also about negative headlines and whether they are fair and accurate and show balance. Having said that, we've had this huge debate, haven't we, about the briefing war because of this BBC documentary. But how do Harry and Meghan think that the palace and others are going to react if they go on Oprah for 90 minutes, cast around a load of accusations, there isn't a right of reply offered to anybody that they're accusing of anything? What do they expect the reaction to be? Do they expect the palace to just not try and provide some sort of response to that? So that's when we've then seen statements released in response to some of the stuff that Harry and Meghan have been saying. I mean, you could argue that the royals would rather nothing negative ever made it into the papers about them, but that's probably not that realistic. The deal goes wrong when royals think that they can turn off the tap of publicity when it starts to get critical and negative. I suppose if you're working for a publication that has a readership that's in favour of the monarchy, then you're acting as a critical friend. You're looking at what they do and you're saying, oh, that's a very good thing to do. The Invictus Games, what an initiative. We'll put a load of coverage behind that because it's a wonderful thing to have done. But then there's, oh, I've heard that people are suggesting that William and Kate aren't working hard enough and that they're being put to shame by Princess Anne, who's carrying out more engagements in a week. That's interesting. Let's have a look at how many engagements they've carried out. Oh, actually their workload is comparatively quite low. Maybe we should write something about that. Maybe we should ask some people about it. Exactly the same with stories about Harry and Meghan. Oh, I've heard that, things aren't great. They've lost some staff, some people don't get on with them. Okay, well, let's try and investigate that. Let's speak to some people who might be in the know, try and find out a bit more. Let's take Megxit. What was the media meant to do? Just present Harry and Meghan's version of why that breakdown happened? And actually, if you read all the coverage, you'll have quite a nuanced and complex picture of various different things breaking down in that situation. On one hand, yeah, Harry and Meghan increasingly operating in a silo, and both by design but also because of who they are and what they wanted to do, becoming marginalised, and a palace system that at times seemed to work against them. And it isn't just enough to be presented with this highly choreographed, sort of staged managed image of royalty. Equally, you can't have Harry and Meghan going on very high profile platforms claiming to be bastions for the truth and then not expect that to be challenged if there are inconsistencies in that narrative. You know, this isn't about people wanting to have a go or having vendettas. It's about, you've said this, does it stand up to scrutiny? So this idea that journalists go into it one-sided or influenced by one person or another, no, actually, maybe it's a bit more mercenary than that. What journalists are after is the truth, the story, the scoop.